Hello, and welcome to a new season of If My Feet Could Talk, the podcast where we talk about everything life general, sport, especially running, and we just mention where our feet have gone on amazing journeys and adventures in our lives, where our feet take us. You know, we have been on just in life itself. We have been on such amazing adventures. And sometimes you don't even realize it until you talk about it. So obviously it's a new season. All previous seasons are still available on all podcasts, and season 2 onwards is available on YouTube. So let's have a little catch up with myself before I bring my next guest on. What have I been up to since September? Well, I'm still run streaking and going strong. I'm on day 580 today of recording. I've not been injured. I've not been ill. So all is well. I also got to race a proper race last weekend, just gone, down in Cornwall. It was a fantastic race, well organised by Dave from Vic Owens. Dave was a former guest on here in season 1. So you can go listen to that podcast. Fantastic race, really tough. But it was so great to finally catch up with friends I've not seen in almost 9 months now. And I won't lie, I did sort of get a little bit emotional, a little bit of tear in my eye. Because it has been tough, not being able to race. I've kept myself busy. I've done virtual events and stuff like that. But I love the race atmospheres. I love catching up with friends and having a chat with them, and and I've not seen a lot of them since I last raced back in March. So, I did get a little bit teary. Took myself to one side. I had a word with myself, got myself sorted. But it just goes to show. Sometimes you don't, excuse me, you don't realise you miss something properly until it's gone, and then it comes back, and then it hits you, unexpectedly. But anyway, that's enough about me. Let's move on. Now, like in previous seasons, I like to get a guest on, and this latest guest is an absolute gem in the running world. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Vic Owens, also known as the Happy Runner. We are recording. Hello there, and welcome to the podcast, Vic. How are you, and how's the family?
I'm okay. They're all right. Yes, thank you very much.
Excellent. How have you been coping with obviously the lockdown? Because you're in North Wales and stuff, and obviously different to us in England. How have you been doing with all that and the family and stuff?
It's to be fair, it's not been too bad for us. We live a little bit rural, so we're kind of used to being out on our own. We don't actually have neighbours. We have cows as neighbours. And both my children are homeschooled, so that's not changed. I work from home, so that's not changed. And my husband's a builder, so he still had to go to work. So in general, it's not been too bad. I think missing seeing in family has been the only thing that we've really has really affected us. And then running wise, I've just been running my local trails around my back garden. Yeah, so we've been quite lucky. We've probably not been as affected as, you know, people who live in the city and who live in like smaller spaces. So we've been quite fortunate.
Oh, that's good. So tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself, running aside, because we'll get into that. Where you're from, what you do, what is your family makeup, all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so I'm Vic Owens. I live in North Wales, as you said, but I'm originally from London. So I've now lived in Wales longer than I ever lived in London in my childhood. Our family consists of my two younger children. One's just gone into teenage years, so that's so much fun. But Sophie's 13, Ollie's 10. We've got 3 tortoises, a hedgehog, and 2 dogs. And we live in a nice little farmhouse in North Wales. And my brother lives with us as well. He's probably a little bit more famous than me, so I'm sure everyone knows who he is. So yeah, so that's our little family, really.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned your brother, and I've obviously seen you post your runs and races with your brother. Tell me a little bit about your brother.
Okay, so my brother Alexander, who has been nicknamed Alexander the Great, he's got severe brain damage. So he's 32 years old, physique of a child, so he needs time care and just basic things like he doesn't cut his food up, he doesn't know what hot and cold is, so if you give him a boiling hot cup of tea, he'd drink it and scold himself. So he just needs 24/7 care basically, but he absolutely adores running. So he moved in with me, it was like 2 years ago now, and before that he was living with mum and dad, but they got to the point they couldn't care for him anymore. So he came to live with me, and obviously that weekend we were out at the park run, and he'd never ran before in his life, and it just went crazy from there. So we found out that when he runs, the adrenaline and the endorphins that releases into his brain gives him some kind of clarity, so everything becomes a lot clearer for him when that kicks in, and his speech becomes very fluid and excited, and he can express things that he can't normally, and he did the London Marathon last year as well, which was amazing. Raised loads of money for Headway, which is a charity that helps people with brain injury. And yeah, so for him, running has completely changed everything. His mental health is so much better. It helps him have like a controlled area in his life where he can make decisions. And he loves medals. You should see his medal collection. He loves the bling. That is why he's in it. So yeah, so that's a little bit about my brother. He's awesome.
So it must go, like I said, we'd probably go off on a tangent, and we already started here. So having your brother more focused because of running, more clearer and happier and stuff, that must make your life as a carer a lot easier as well.
Yeah, it's yes. Life as a carer, I think if you're not a carer, you can't even begin to imagine what life as a carer is. And I think I can't really explain it. I've got a lot of admiration for anyone who cares, and I think there's a lot of people have forgotten about if you care for a family member, it's a lot of people don't realize, you know, what's involved with that. And it's sometimes, you know, when parents are caring for children, that's something they've always done, and it becomes normal. And it isn't normal. It isn't the normal. It's something that is a full-time job that you don't get a break from ever. And with my brother living with us, like, he'll grow old with me. I'll always care for him forever now. But yeah, he's running is amazing, and I get to take him on runs, which is great. He's got like a guide rope,
Yeah.
so we use that a lot. And then sometimes he has days where he doesn't want me to hold the guide rope, but he has to hold it, so that's his comfort blanket. I'm not allowed to hold it because he's too cool for that on some days.
Oh, that's fair enough.
But yeah, but he's really funny when he runs, so it's kind of like his clarity time. So we'll be running for a few minutes, and then maybe he'll like go on a downhill and he'll get like an adrenaline rush because he's sprinting, and he'll just turn to me and be like, I don't like that food. Like, he's been waiting to tell me that all week. And I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry about that. I didn't know. So he gets this like clarity that he can tell me something that maybe he can't tell me when it's happening, or he can't express. And yeah, he's really funny. He sort of shouts out to people that go past, but he's got no social awareness. So sometimes people can be like, whoa, because he, in his physique and appearance, looks like an average Joe. No one would really be able to tell that he's got a disability unless they tried talking to him. So when he's running along and he's sort of shouting at people like, hey, granddad, you know, if a guy's older, or yelling at schoolboys like, don't be naughty, be good to your parents, you know, we get some really weird looks. But yeah, we just take it in our stride.
That's really great. Is he older than you?
No, he's 18 months younger.
All right, so there's not much difference
So
in age.
we're really close in age. No, but do you know what? Because he looks really young for his age. It's ridiculous, and he often gets mistaken for a teenager. And I'm at the point now where people are asking me how old my son is, and I am not impressed at all.
Oh dear.
It's not cool.
So, when you were growing up as a child, were you a? Oh, that's our doorbell. That's right. When you were growing up as a child, were you a sporty child? Did you do a lot of sports? No.
No, not at all.
This with a lot of people I speak to, not many were. But, okay, so what were you like as a child?
So I was very quiet and shy as a child, and we lived in a house in London that I think it was like a 3-bedroom house, and I had lots of brothers and sisters, so that we were a big family. So we all kind of got on with our own stuff. And my pastime was pretty much sitting and reading to my brother Alexander. I used to spend loads of time with him, or reading. I just read and wrote. I didn't really listen to music. I didn't do anything sporty or wanted to do anything sporty. And it was just, I loved reading and writing, and that was it basically.
I hear your father was a runner. Did he inspire you in any way when you started to get into your running? Was that
Yeah, yeah. So I think one of my favorite pastimes is my dad telling us bedtime stories, because like obviously there was lots of us kids and dad worked full time, so we didn't get to spend loads of quality time with him. So yeah, bedtime stories. He used to either tell us a bedtime story or play a song on the guitar, and some of the stories used to be of when he was a runner, which was before he met my mum, because my mum changed everything. She fed him lots, and I don't think he got to run after that. So yeah, he was a fast runner back in his day, in school and college and after that. So yeah, he was short distance but very fast, and he's very used to do, and it always made me want to run. But as I didn't think that was a possibility, and also I was very much like brought up in a household where, you know, like mum looked after us and fed us and clothed us, and dad went to work, and I thought that would be me. I'd you know, be a proper little woman and baking for my husband day and night. So I never considered the fact that I could be my own person and just go out and run. So yeah, that never happened.
So what got you into running then? What was it that sparked that? Do you know what, I want to lace a couple of pairs of shoes on and go for it?
Well, I did a few Race for Lives with some friends, you know, just should we do Race for Life? But I think we pretty much walked it every time. And then I was at a point in my life when the children were very young. I was on my own with them, and they'd go to their dads at the weekends, and I kind of myself just at the weekend completely lost. And I was in quite a bad space really when they went to their dads, and I was just sort of by myself in an empty house. It was a really hard time mentally as well. And I just thought, what can I do? So I got a puppy, obviously, to keep me company. And then realised that having a Springer Spaniel puppy was maybe something that I needed to get out and walk her constantly. And she didn't walk, she ran. There's no walking with my Bella. So I started running, and we used to go out little runs because she was quite young. And then when she was back at home sleeping, I'd be like, I want to go out and do another run. So it just kind of went from there. And I was going to the gym at the time, and I said to my personal trainer, I quite fancy a half marathon. And he was like, what? And he doesn't run. And I was like, do you fancy doing it with me? Because I don't want to do it on my own. So we did. And that's pretty much how I started running, by getting a puppy, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a Springer dog, so half Springer Spaniel, half Labrador, and he's absolutely bonkers. You know, and he can run forever. He's only a year old, but I'd struggle to keep pace with him. That's for sure. Absolutely mental. But so a dog got you into running. Well, that's different. obviously, the loneliness of not having your children at the weekends and stuff, that was the main source. But the dog really got you out the door. You know.
Yeah, she didn't walk. We had to run when I was with Bella. But yeah, that was kind of like a series of events that led to that. And then in my head, I thought, oh, okay, so running, this is what we could do now. And it kind of went from there.
And how was those first steps?
Yeah, horrible. I couldn't breathe properly. I was like, oh, I'm so unfit, which was ridiculous because I was always active. I've always been an active like adult. I'd always walk to work instead of catching the bus, even if it was like 7-8 miles away. But yeah, and I was at the gym as well doing like circuits and weights, but I'd never done much cardio. So yeah, just like I ran for 10 minutes and I was like, I must have done a marathon by now because I'm exhausted. Yeah, it was horrific. It was not enjoyable at all. And training for the half marathon was not enjoyable at all. I didn't enjoy anything about it. It was horrendous.
So what sort of time frame was there between you starting your running and the half marathon?
Okay, so I think we had about 7 months. I think we gave ourselves. We picked a half that was 7 months. Sort of trained up to that, but then after that, things kind of skyrocketed really quickly. So after we'd done the half, my friend who had done it with, Craig, was like, "Oh, we should do a marathon now," and that happened. I think probably within about 4 or 5 months we'd done the marathon, and then everything went crazy. Within 2 months, we'd done an ultra, and by the end of that year, I'd done my first 200 miles. So yeah, it just.
So how long ago? How long ago was your half marathon?
So I started training for the half marathon. I think it's almost 4 years ago now.
For 4 years.
So yeah.
Okay, so that is quite a short period of time from going from couch to 200 miles. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me couch to marathon, and then a couple of years before I stepped into the ultra world. So it was about 2 years for me to hit my first ultra. But you've done couch to 200 miles in a very short period of time.
Yes.
I was just going to say, where did you get into the longer stuff? But you sort of already answered that. What was your thinking behind going from half marathon to ultra to 200 miles in such a short period of time? What spurred you to keep pushing longer more than getting faster, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Okay. So when I did the training for the half and the marathon, that was both road, and my head was very much in the commercial side. I wanted the good medal, I wanted the time, and that's what I was training for, and I didn't enjoy it at all. And I think that's why I didn't stick with that side of things. And then booking the ultra to try that, that changed everything, because when I did it, I realized I couldn't run it the speed I tried to run a marathon at, and I had to eat, which was great. I had like 4 meals that day.
Oh, yeah.
And that changed everything. I enjoyed that day. And I realized that was it. Ultras was for me. I hate marathon distance. Even when I'm training, there's like that mental thing. And as soon as I pass marathon distance, I'm like, oh, I love this run. It's great. So yeah, I just don't enjoy that side of things. I'm not in it for the time or the medal.
It is a different world, isn't it? The moment people step out of the road running side and start hitting those trails and realizing where their spirit, their soul is actually connected to nature, and then obviously they find out there's pizzas and stuff at the aid stations and not a Lucozade bottle or gel or something. You know, they've gone to a birthday party instead of something else. They realize there's a new world out there, that type of thing, and suddenly, you know, all these events, they start Googling, don't they? You start Googling all these new events, finding out, oh, that's a 6-dayer, oh, that's a 100-miler, oh, they put scones and cream and jam on their menus. It's mad how people tend to step into the world of trail and ultra, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it is a completely different ball game, completely different. I think like when I did my first marathon, it was like Manchester Marathon I did, and it was just so tedious. It was just the same thing over and over and over again. But then I did my first trail marathon a couple of weeks after that, and it took me double the time because I'd never run up a hill before in my entire life. I'd never trained for this, but it was beautiful. It was amazing. Everyone was laughing and joking, and like people talked to me. They weren't trying to like go past me or were conscious of me going past them. They just wanted to say hi. And I realized as well that like the people you meet, I don't know, like, or don't ask like what job do you have, or what car do you drive. That doesn't come into the equation. You're interested about them as a person. um what they like, what's their favorite food on an ultra, what's their best moment, or what's the strangest thing they've seen. And you can come home knowing things about a person that maybe their closest friends don't know. It is completely different when you hit the trails and you go into ultra miles.
Definitely. I mean, I've been to loads of road races, and not unless I knew someone there, I've never come away with a new friend. But every trail race, every ultra that I've been to, I've formed new friendships with people that you run with at the time because you've come across someone new, and so you start sharing that random journey with them. Or whether it's at the end where they're clapping you in, they start chatting to you and so forth. You don't get that in the roadside. And, yes, the atmosphere can be mega at a road marathon. Take London as an example. It's probably got one of the best atmospheres for road events, but it's a completely different atmosphere when you're coming into an event village on a trail ultra in a mountain, or some random village in the middle of the UK, in the Lake District or something, with cowbells ringing. It's completely different aura, I suppose, behind the atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think people are there for a different reason as well. So it definitely attracts a different type of person. I don't think there's very few ultra runners that I think, oh, I don't like them, because normally like people who run ultras are super nice, normally like really humble, genuine people. Yeah, so it's a whole new world.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're sort of semi-bashing road running a little bit. And it's not meant to be like that, because road running has its purpose, and we both do it.
Yeah.
And we both do it in different forms, be it either you're supporting your brother through his running, or you're going to park run and you do a 5K race or what have you. It has its purpose, and there's lots of lovely people there. But you're right. I find the attitudes of some people in road running completely wrong in the mentality compared to those
Yeah.
of trail and ultra. So if you were to fall over and hurt yourself in a trail or ultra, guarantee the runners will stop and help you. Now, I've been in a road race where I've seen them jump over an injured person because they're chasing their time, their PB. And that's the difference I've found between the two, and which is why I always prefer the races on the green and muddy side of things.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you.
So obviously you've got into your long stuff now. What was your first ultra?
So my first ultra was a rat race one. I
Yeah.
signed up for a yearly membership with them, and I did rat race the wall, and it was a great first ultra. They're quite commercial in a good way. They really look after their runners. Like when we got to the food tent, there was like shandy, ginger beer, pints. The food was like, I've never seen so much food. There was a guy giving massages. But yeah, there was like a little cubicle where you could have a shower if you wanted to. It was just crazy. It's a really rat race the wall that I did when I did it was just perfect for a first ultra. It was just a party. But I did realise that even though I really liked that, I didn't want commercial races. I wanted races where maybe I didn't see someone for 10, 20 miles. I wanted something a little bit more raw. And that's when I signed up for the Offers Dyke race. And I did that, I think it was 4 months later. It's advertised as 186 miles, but I've done it twice now, and it's 200 miles every time. And that was perfect. That was very raw. You know, you get handed a pot noodle if you're lucky. There's no beer, there's no showers, there's no pretty much outdoor checkpoints. If you're late, the doors closed, you don't get anything. It's the real stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the Wall was my first ultra when I stepped.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, in 2012. I DNF'd though at 40 miles. I wasn't mentally strong enough. It was as simple as that. Although I blamed it on sore feet and stuff, it was, I wasn't mentally strong enough to keep going. So it obviously taught me a lot of lessons. But yeah, the Wall race, and you're right. It is one of the very big commercial companies. You know, and I think you could almost put it towards like some of the big city marathon type commercial feels, where if you raced maybe your local village marathon, you probably get the same feel as a non-commercial ultra type thing. You know, it's, volunteers aren't paid, they're out there in all weathers cheering you on for hours on end. And you're not being put into a shower. The shower is the rain outside. So I do agree with you on that side of things, especially when it comes to the rat race. And it's not cheap either if you did it in an individual.
That's what I got the membership, because I just thought if I do more than 2 races in a year, I've got my money back. And I did every single one that I could get to. So yeah,
that's the thing. I mean, I wouldn't do that because I'm not interested in half their races because they don't interest me. So the obstacle stuff and all that, it reminds me too much of work, obstacle races and what have you. So I would literally only do either 1 or 2 of the races, and it's just not financially viable. Where other ultras are far cheaper, you get pretty much the same sort of level of aid stations and stuff like that. But you're not, it's mostly put on by volunteers, and that's where I tend to head myself. So, as well as getting into the long stuff, you decided shoes weren't for you. And for those listening, what I mean shoes weren't for you, basically, you decided to get rid of your standard commercial type shoe and go barefoot or wear minimalist footwear. So you're more connected with nature and all that sort of stuff. Now, we've had barefoot runners on this podcast before, and you probably know him, Alex Kashifi. Do you know Alex?
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, we've had him on. So it's not like you're alone in the world, What drew you to going without, the comfort that most people would be going for?
So it was, I think it was 2018, the May. I was doing Chester 100. And I ran alongside Mark Lutman, who I always thought was a bit of a hippie, like vegan sandal runner. And I ran with him for a bit, and like he was talking to me about changing my diet and being more minimalistic. I was like, it's really not for me. I loved my Ultra Pros, my shoes, but I was noticing that after I passed marathon distance, I was getting blisters and sores and heat spots, and everything was becoming a lot harder. My feet were just a constant problem. Anyway, so on this run, we ran together a few bits, and we actually finished together as well. And just, I think it was past the 70 miles we got, and my feet were just appalling. And I got into that really grouchy ultra mood, where it's like everything hurts and nothing you do is going to make it better. But my feet were they were horrific. And he was saying to me, right, you need to sort of think about your feet and all this. I was like, yeah. I didn't really pay much attention, not in a disrespectful way, but like, that works for you, but this is what works for me, and I'm going to be fine. I'm quite stubborn. But when we crossed that finish line, I took my shoes off, and they were just in such a state, my feet were. And I was like, that's it. I'm not putting those shoes back on. They're going in the bin. And I remember my husband being like, yeah, you'll be fine, just give us some space. But when we got home, I actually put those shoes in the bin, and that was it. And Mark, I must have told Mark Lukeman, because he gifted me a pair of sandals and they came, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't run in these. And I wore them, and I was like, okay, so not so bad. And then I started looking online, and I ordered the Vibram 5 Fingers. And then that was it. They just put them on, and they just fitted, and they felt great. And I did lots of research that said you should start from scratch. You should do a mile in them and then 2 miles. And I was like, okay, I'll walk the dogs for a couple of weeks in them, and I'll recover from the Chester run. And I think it was about 3 weeks later, I did a 50k in them. 3 weeks after that, I did a 50 miler. By the end of the year, I'd done 200 miles in them in one go, and they just worked for me. I don't get blisters. I don't get heat spots. The only time I've gotten a blister is I'd worn the shoe like so badly that it had holes in the bottom. And in my head, I thought, oh, but I'm barefoot running, so a hole in my shoe's fine, but it's not, because it creates a blister around the hole, doesn't it? And that's the only mistake I've ever made. But yeah, my feet now, I can just, they're never an issue. I can put a pair of Vibrams on that I've never worn before and go out and run in them and not have any troubles. They're just amazing for me. So yeah, it was just a matter of, I was having so much trouble with my feet after sort of marathon distance that I just kind of went from one end of the spectrum to the other, and it worked for me.
So I raced at the weekend, and there was a vegan runner. I knew that because he had it on his top. Most vegan runners have it on their top. And he was wearing Lunar sandals. I thought, oh, cool. Yeah. It's not a shock to me. I know quite a few barefoot runners, but it wasn't until I was running during the race, because obviously we started in waves, so I didn't. He was in the first wave. He was long gone anyway, and I got to a point where I thought, oh, by this going through this farmer's field and come up to one of the gates, and I thought it was a solid bit of ground with a bit of slurry on it. I went up to my knees, all right, in slurry, in cow shit and mud. And I just thought, it could be worse. I could be barefoot. Obviously, I then thought of the guy. I went, what the hell are we doing with this? That's got to be one of the worst parts of it. That sort of stuff that you come. Obviously, it's easy to wash off and it'll come off and all that sort of stuff. But that moment you put your foot in, you know what I mean. That's got to be one of the unpleasant parts.
Maybe it's never really bothered me. It's not bothered me, to be honest. I'm very much like, it will clean off as easily as it got on, and then you just go through a puddle and it's fine. I have become more conscious. Obviously, when I come home from a run, I always like clean my feet. Sometimes I soak them in Dettol, because obviously your feet could be more prone to infection because there's a lot more getting on them. Also, like thistles and thorns, I've had to pull stuff out my feet before. So yeah, there is that. I think that the worst thing about barefoot running is having to stop and pull out like a holly thorn, or I've stepped on a nail before and that's gone through my heel. Like that, but you become very technical minded. You're looking at the floor a lot, and it just becomes second nature. You adapt really quickly. It's amazing how quickly the body adapts, and the mind as well. And it just becomes normal.
I interviewed a army major in the last series who barefoot marched stroke fast tabbed from Land's End to Edinburgh via London to raise money for his child with a rare disease. And I tried giving him advice based on what my barefoot friends have given me, and his feet were in bits. I mean, proper bits. He had to go to a hospital a few times to get them repaired. He did it, and the amount of pressure from the public telling him to put shoes on, he remained resilient, and he did it. And since then, other people are doing a relay version of his event in barefoot. So people have never ever done barefoot walk, and they're walking a mile, 5 miles, even a marathon for the first time barefoot off scratch. So it just goes to show, barefooting can be fantastic, but there is a little bit of elements of issues if you're not careful, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to forget that when we're putting our body under stress, if people run a marathon in shoes and they put up their feet after and they've got blisters or a toenails dropped off, we go, we've just run a marathon. That's completely normal. But if I was to put a picture up on my feet in a bad condition after a marathon, people go, it's because you didn't wear shoes.
Yeah.
And that it's not, we're putting our body through stuff, our feet through things that isn't normal for us to do, and that is the result. So yeah, with barefoot running, you haven't got that cushion, you haven't got that protection from the floor, so you need to condition your feet majorly. But yeah, whatever we do, we're gonna get something like, if we do a super long run with sticks, we could get blisters on our thumbs. It's everything has consequences, but it's just finding what works for you and going with it, I guess.
Brilliant. So I got to know you through social media over the last couple of years, and you love a Mark Cockbain event, don't you? All right.
Bit of torture.
Right. So for those that don't know who this guy is and what his events are, can you explain to them and explain some of the events that you've done of his?
Okay, I don't think I can explain Mark. I'm not sure anybody can, even if they were professional. But yeah, I've done some of his events. So his events are called like the hard stuff, aren't they? Yeah, and they're just a little bit crazy. They are usually his actual official races are usually put on with the mindset that no one's going to finish. It'll be a surprise if someone finishes. And the ones that I've done in lockdown this year, I did the back garden ultra, which was run around your back garden for as many hours as possible. So when it started, like the first person did it, so they were sort of put on the leaderboard. I think when I did it, I was maybe the 6th person to do it. So I had like that person that had done it before me. My target was to beat them. And that was just running laps around my back garden. I think 8 laps around my back garden. No, 40 laps around my back garden made 1 mile, 40 laps. And I think I did something like 68 miles in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's crazy. That's just mental torture.
Because obviously I watched you do the back garden things, and obviously being in Wales, you had different restrictions to us, so I can understand why you took that on, because you can only go a certain distance from your house anyway during lockdown 1. Whereas I could go from my doorstep anywhere I wanted for my exercise. So that event didn't appeal to me because I didn't need to do that. But you've done his proper races. You did the tunnel last year, was it? How did that go for you? How did the
Not very well. So I think I entered that ballot with the thinking that, I'll enter this, I won't get in. And then realised that only a handful of people had entered it because they weren't as daft as me. So I ended up doing that. I hadn't trained. I don't do road running, so I hadn't trained for it on any account. So it didn't go very well. And to be fair, I probably didn't put in 100%. I wasn't in the right mindset. But yeah, so completely belly flopped that. But it was interesting, and different. So that was just running up and down a tunnel, which I think is the longest tunnel in England, if I'm right. Maybe. Yeah, so it was sort of like a mile out and a mile back, but it turned out it was more than a mile, which nobody was impressed with. But obviously that was going to happen because it's Mark. So yeah, so you complete darkness through this tunnel, out and back. And Alex was there as well. I remember Alex he was probably the only runner that was able to sleep. So I remember running down the tunnel and hearing this really weird noise, like there was a grizzly bear in the tunnel, and it was Alex, and he was at the side snoring. How no one get any sleep because it was just horrible. You'd have to lay on the cold ground. But there he was. I almost fell over him because it was pitch black. And then there were other runners just sort of running into the side of the tunnel walls because they were so tired, and they were drooping just forwards and backwards. I did it the first year, and I think 2 people finished that year, and I think something like maybe 20 of us started. I think they had 2 finishes, if I'm right. I could be wrong. But yeah, so that was an experience. And it also a good learning curve for me that you can't just rock up at a race. It doesn't matter, how many miles you've run or what you've run or your experience of running. You can't rock up at a race and think, I'll wing it. You have to train for that race and that mindset. So yeah, but hopefully I'll have better luck next year because I'm entering another of Mark's races, Long Last, which is all road. So yeah, that kind of goes against everything we've been saying. It's a cycle path, and it's not just all on road. A lot of it runs alongside a road, but terrain-wise, it's all tarmac and road. So that is something I'm literally spending the year training for, conditioning my feet on road. Last weekend I went out with some friends and did a recce of it. We did 33 miles and my feet were sore after 20. And usually I can go 200 on the trails and say my feet are fine. So yeah, this is going to take a lot of training for me. It's something completely different that my body's not used to, which is why I signed up, because I wanted a challenge. So we'll see how it goes.
So I've ran 250 miles on a road before, and it's a completely different experience to running 250 miles on trail. Your body does not move around; it stays locked in, and it does. Your joints all continue, and you just move them, use the muscles in the same way each mile, compared to a trail where you're weaving about, you're up and down, you're all over the place. So your body moves differently. It's a complete different way of running if you're not used to it.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole different ball game, and it's very when you go out on the trails. I know when I go out on the trails, because it's very undulating and you get hills. I might hike up some hills. I might, do this, do that, different muscles, like you say, different movement. Even though I'm hiking up a hill, I'm getting a bit of rest from running. Whereas when you're on the road, you don't tend to stop because what's the excuse? There's no hill. So you tend to go and you don't realize how long you've gone for without a break. And then by the time you get to the point where your body's like, I'm done now, you're like, oh no, I've got another 100 miles. You can't be done. So yeah, you've got to have, a game plan, and you've got to get the training in and just know how to keep your body going. Yeah. And mentally it's going to be pretty boring, I reckon. Yeah, and also with doing the recce's, I was really surprised how sparse it was for a road race. I was expecting to constantly see a spa or a garage. I think I went 20 miles and then came across a little post office the other weekend. So even though it's on road, it's still sort of in remote areas. So yeah, going to have to be completely self-sufficient between checkpoints, which are quite rare as well. So yeah, carrying a lot on my back. I'm going to have to get used to that again.
Yeah, I mean, it's not your first time, all right, of doing long distances and what have you. And your recent fastest known time attempt was the Monarch's Way, and you had you had a time of 16 days and something to beat. Let's talk about the Monarch's Way. What is it, and why did you decide this was the thing for you to do this year?
So the Monarch's Way is a 625-mile route that King Charles took when he was escaping after the Powick battle. I had attempted it the year before in the race. So I'd done a lot of training for it and a lot of recce's, but when it came to the race, it just didn't work for me because I was doing a lot of night running, which was quite tough for me. I'm not great with night running. So yeah, things just came apart. I was hallucinating, falling asleep on my feet. I woke up like in the middle of a cow field in poo, drenched, and it just didn't work for me. But I loved the route, and I loved the experience. And I was like, as soon as like I finished, I remember messaging the race director and saying, right, I'm going to come back next year. I'm going to sign up. I'm going to train all year. And he gave me loads of tips. Like I hadn't recorded the entire route, and he's like, go back, walk the entire route and learn it, and then come back and run it in the race. So I was like, do that. And I said to my parents, you know, if I do it next year, can you help out? Because obviously when I go to races, they have to babysit and care for my brother. But my mum had actually, she's French, and she was going home for 6 weeks, and that was the time period that the Monarchs was in. And I was like, oh no. So I kind of left it and put it out of my heart, and it just kind of faded a bit. Then I did support for my friend Neil at the canal races, and who should be there doing checkpoints but the race director of the Monarchs. And the minute I saw his car, all the emotions came flooding back, and the want and the desire and the route, and I was like, oh. And then I saw him and we had a chat, and I was just like, oh, I want to do it. And then I started thinking about doing it on my own. Could I do it with my own crew, off my own back? And then of course that brought into play the fastest known time. Like maybe I could do the whole route, which is slightly different from the race route. So they don't do the entire route. They do pretty much all of it, but they don't go off to historical points that you have to do to apply for the fastest known time, and little things that you have to do the race don't do. So that I started thinking about that, and I started recceing it, and then I started thinking about a time frame, a date, and then I spent the year just doing that basically. And apart from the last 50 miles, I reckon I knew exactly where I could sleep if I needed to sleep en route. I knew where the shops were. And it just literally, I became obsessed with this route. I was like, if I wasn't out there running it, I was on Google going through the route, looking at it. I was like checking out videos and writing, just everything. It just literally became my life. So yeah, and then I went out and did it, and all the hard work paid off, to be fair. I had to be 16 days, which had been set by Lee Scott, and I did. I think I did it in, is it 13 days, 13 hours or something?
Yeah, 13 days, 13 hours and 38 minutes.
Which was pretty cool, because I knew all I had to do was complete it to get the women's record. So I didn't even have to, you know, I could take 30 days if I wanted to. So the fact that everything just went to plan, and I didn't expect to be running every single day. I'm going to walk out, but every day I'd wake up and I'd just start running. It was great. I think there was one day where I think 70% was walking because I had problems with my shins, and the rest I was just getting up every day and just running and running, and it was great. It was amazing. Yeah, it couldn't have been more perfect. I had like some shins issues, and when they came, they were so painful. Obviously anybody who's had that knows that you get shin splints from increasing your mileage too quickly, which after I hit 236 miles, I'd never ran more than that in one go. So, you know, 625, obviously I'm going to get shin splints at some point. But yeah, you know, somehow I managed to work through that and keep moving. Yeah, it's just amazing. It's awesome. Amazing experience.
But there must have been some low points. It can't be 13 days of, oh, this is amazing, I'm absolutely enjoying this. You know, there's going to be like a few days in, it's got to be a point where suddenly your energy levels have gone a bit. You sat down, the weather's bad, all that sort of stuff. So what were they for you? What were the low points?
Um, we had some really bad weather, but that wasn't low points. That was kind of fun. I don't know why it was fun. We were going through a forest with a lightning storm. I was petrified, but it was pretty fun as well.
Did you have poles then?
Yeah, I used. So funny story. Funny story. So we got there and parked up at the start the night before, and my brother was crewing for me the first week, and we're in this van, and I sort of lay this way and he's laying this way. So if I need to go out for a wee in the night, I have to go out through the back doors, and I did, and it was raining, and I opened the back doors as quietly as possible. And as I slipped out and I twisted my ankle, this is the morning of starting, and I was like, oh my goodness, and I didn't mention it to anyone. So I started running, and about 15 miles in, I rang my brother and I told him, and he's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know, because I've started now. And he goes, okay, he says, why don't you use those pole things that you've brought along? And I said, no, I can't use them till at least the second week. And he's like, just use them for goodness sake. He's like, take the pressure off your ankle. So I took one out. So I just had this one pole, and for the next few days, it took the pressure off my ankle came right. But this pole just became like my comfort blanket, and I wasn't doing anything with it most of the time. And people that joined me along the way were saying to me, why have you only got one pole? Like, what are you doing with it? And it just kind of, it kind of became my Wilson, and I was talking to it a lot as well through the tough times. So yeah, I did have poles in the lightning storm, which was interesting. Everything was very interesting.
So out of obviously you finished it. We know you finished it. 13 days, 13 hours, 38 minutes. But that's going to be always going to be the most important, most biggest thing ever of that event. But what was, apart from that, what was your highlight of the journey, the adventure across the 625? If you could take one moment away.
It was the Jurassic Coast. But so I knew that the Jurassic Coast was going to be the steepest bit of the route. I knew it was going to be the hardest, and it turned out that I approached it at the end of the day, so I had to climb it. Like, I was really tired. I think I'd already done like 45 miles, and now I had the 7-mile stretch and 2 big climbs on the Jurassic Coast. I think, oh, this is going to be horrific now, but it strangely wasn't horrific. It was probably the best bit. It was amazing. And my friend who was crewing for me that second week, Gavin, he had parked at the end, and he was running towards me because I said to him, oh, this is going to be really hard. I'm going to need some moral support. And we kind of met halfway. But yeah, the views were amazing. They were just breathtaking, and just amazing. I can't explain how it felt, knowing that this was kind of like the toughest bit, and I was doing it. I remember we came to the summit, where it's got that little trig point stone, hasn't it? And I remember Gav saying, oh, I'll take a picture of you. And I just went up to the trig point and put my hands on it, pushed myself up, turned around and sat on it. And he was just like, you got some energy still then? I just felt amazing. I was just, yeah, I think that was that point is really clear in my mind. It just sort of, everything just sort of came together, and I think I thought at that point, I might just do this. I might be able to finish. Yeah, it was just a highlight. It was amazing.
Now you've done that, and you've run some of the Southwest Coastal Path. Are you tempted by the female fastest known time for the South Coast Path?
In all honesty, I'm not tempted by any fastest known time. I'm not competitive in any manner.
Oh, you are.
Honestly, I'm not. When I set out to do the Monarchs, there was, like, I wanted to do the route, and it was kind of cool that I could go out, and if I completed it, I was going to get a fastest known time. And I'd made a plan to get it within that 16 days, and it was going to be great if I could. but I don't have that competitive streak, you know, like I want to go out. So if I took any course, even in a time scale, I wouldn't be doing it to get a record. Does that make sense? I literally love the journey, and that's more important to me. You know, if that 1 minute means I can't stand at the top and look out at the sunrise, you know, I'm going to take the sunrise and not get the fastest known time. That is just, those moments are more important to me than anything else.
So take the fastest known time out then. Would you be tempted to run the Southwest Coastal Path in its entirety in an adventure?
I haven't looked into it enough to be able to say I would be. I haven't allowed myself yet.
Because we've got some stunning views
Yeah.
around there. Those sunsets as you know, as you're looking over towards
Definitely.
Land's End and the sun's going up and down. Oh.
I'll have to look into it.
I think you should. I think you'll enjoy it. Right, we'll move on to our quick fire round. 10 questions. Okay. I'll ask you a question. You'll give me a quick answer. Okay, so question number 1. Your favourite snack whilst on a run or in a race?
Samosa, vegetable samosa.
That's different. Your favourite bit of kit that you've bought?
Oh, my favourite bit of kit that I've bought. Oh, I've bought all my kit. I've got myself a new, I call it a Brian belt. Do you know Brian? What's his last name? Tall beard. Oh
No.
gosh, what's his last name? Okay.
We'll have a game of Guess Who.
Tuhey. Brian Tuhey, is it?
Right.
So he told me about a little belt I could buy. It's called it's like a naked belt, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
On the back of your phone, and it's great because there's one thing I hate is wearing a jacket, and I don't wear a watch. So if I want it on, I take my phone. But now I can put my phone in this little belt. It kind of looks like I've got a poo belly, but that's fine. And I can go out and run without any issues. And this is like my favourite thing. And I took it shopping the other day and put my money in it. That's how sad I'm getting.
Brilliant.
So I think that might be my favourite bit of kit.
Your favourite race you've ever done?
Offers Dyke, every time.
Yeah, it's a good route. Road or trail? Silly question, but road or trail?
Trail.
Okay. Favourite place that you've run? Doesn't have to be in a race, but favourite place that you run it?
I ran through, is it Arundel? On the Monarch's Way, and that was.
I thought you were talking about Frozen or something there, Arundel. Wow.
Exactly. I was expecting to see them. It has got a castle and everything, though.
There you go. It's Frozen, isn't it?
And it's really stunning there. Really, really stunning. So that was a favourite, but I think my all-time favourite might be Anglesey. I don't know if you've been to Anglesey and done any running there.
I was based on HMS Anglesey, fishery protection ship. So I often went to Holyhead. So I know Anglesey very well, and
so I ran the entire loop, the coastal loop, and that is
Yeah, because that's a race as well, isn't it? There's a race. Is it the Ring of Fire?
Yeah. I've not done the race.
Okay, Marmite, love it or no?
Oh no.
I'll be a no then.
No.
How many pairs of 5 fingers shoes do you have? 1 pair. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. You don't need more than one.
You really don't.
Your favourite hot drink?
Coffee.
Do you drink alcohol?
Oh yes.
What's your favorite? This is an extra question. What's your favourite alcoholic drink?
I like Captain Morgan's spiced straight ice cubes.
Good choice. If you could do any race in the world, money doesn't matter. Okay, which one would it be?
I don't think I have a preference. It offers Dyke every day.
Okay. Have you made it into the world of TikTok yet?
Oh God, yes. My daughter is massive on that, and she did make me do a video, but I do not have my own account. I will not be making my own account. You'll not see me running and singing on the trails.
That's a shame. So what's next for you then, Vic? What is the next race and your next adventure that's not a race?
Oh, okay. So in January, I'm going to do the accumulator, which should be fun and interesting. So that's my non-race thing, I guess.
So that's running every day, and you do the daily amount of that day. Is that right?
Yes. So on the 1st, I run the first, and on the 31st, I'll be running 31 miles. So it'll be fine the first 2 weeks, won't it? And then it will kind of be like, okay, my legs are tired now, and I've got to run an ultra every single day.
It's about 400 and something miles, I think you do.
Yeah,
if you stick if you stick to the daily mileage, not do extra. Yeah.
And like, I think we've got lockdown coming. Well, we definitely have lockdown coming again in Wales. So that'll be perfect for me, won't it? So that's going to be great. So that will just be my month. That will be what I'm doing. And then obviously, we've talked about long last. That's going to be my big race next year. I'll spend the whole year training for it. I like to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that it will be that.
Excellent. Do you have any tips for beginner runners?
Just be kind to yourself. I think when you run, you don't know, you can't compare things the way that maybe we do now. So sort of when you're a more experienced runner, you say, oh, I'm going to go out and run this amount, and I know how that's going to weigh up. I know what to expect. But when you first start running, you don't know what to expect. So you try to compare against other people, which is the worst thing you can possibly do. So just be kind to yourself. Don't compare yourself to someone else. Don't go out and say, I've got to run a 9-minute mile or anything. Just enjoy it. Don't go out and, bust a limb or anything. Just enjoy it. That's what it's about. And get on the trails. Stay off the road, people.
Yeah, that's a good bit of advice. Get in the countryside and stuff. It's much fun. Okay, and finally, how can people follow you if they want to see you do your thing?
I'm mostly on Instagram. I think it's the Happy Runner NW for North Wales. So yeah, I'm on Twitter, which I'm not very good at, and Facebook, all the Happy Runner NW.
Brilliant. I'll chuck the links into the description anyway, so people can follow you.
Cool.
We'll have a little end chat afterwards, but for now, thank you very much, Vic. It's been an absolute pleasure on my behalf. Like I said, we go off on tangents here. We've sort of hit the sort of time anyway. But thank you very much for coming on and giving up your time. I know you've been quite busy recently, obviously with work and what have you, but really is appreciated.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So that was Vic Owens. What a wonderful lady. Fantastic runner. And quite inspirational to us, such a short period of time of running. And she's gone from zero to hero pretty quickly. Love that chat. It's so down to earth. And that's what I like doing. I've put her links in the description. Please give her a follow. Check her out. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you can, subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff. Get this podcast going. But thank you for listening to the third series, first episode. I will catch you next time on If My Feet Could Talk.